Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me today. Today I have a card for you that is one of our older stamp sets, and it's getting ready to retire, and it makes me very sad. So I created a couple of versions of a card using Grace's Garden. I've used some of the stamps, I've used one of the dies, and I'm pretty pleased with the way it came out. I have two versions and we're going to make one together, so let's just get started. Okay, here is one of my cards, and here is the second one. And on these I used a couple things that are retiring. First of all, the stamp set itself is retiring, and that's where this greeting comes from. Then I used these stamps. Well, let me show you the stamp set. Here we go. There is the sentiment right here of all blossoms in life's garden, friendship is the most fragrant. And then I used this little vine full of flowers, and I used the bird. And so that is what I used from the stamp set. And I just realized that from the die set on this one, there are so many things you could do, but I ended up just using the little bird. And might be kind of fun to put the cat on there, but this is what I've done. I just love this stamp set, and I'll probably never let it go. But it's going to retire at the end of this month, and so I thought I would make this little card using this stamp and die set. The other dies that I used is another thing that's retiring. I used the stitch shape framelets. I'm very sad to see these go, because this was the first of the dies that we got that had the stitching on it. And I just love them because it's got 4 sizes of the ovals, 4 of the squares, and 4 of the circles. And I'm just going to miss them terribly. So in fact, what I'll probably end up doing is just keep using them and suggest that you find others, I guess, and that's probably what we'll do. So that is where my medallion with my words are on it. Let's see, on this one I did use the subtles folder on this one, and that's another thing that's retiring. Again, sad state of affairs for me. This one I put the flowers going down, ribbon, and a bird, and on this one I stamped the flowers going all the way down the side, ribbon, and a bird. So that is what we're going to do, and we're going to make this one. So I'm just going to set this one aside up here, and you'll be able to see clearly exactly how to do this one, and I'll show you what I did with the stamp on this one to make it work. All right, so let's see what we need for this, and there's my oval die. I used the second largest of the stitched oval dies with this set. So, and I've already cut out my oval and cut out my birds, but I put it on a white, whisper white, or basic white. I've got to learn to say basic white card base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. And I'm just going to give that a little extra burnish here so this card will stay closed. Then I have 2 pieces of Granny Apple, 4 by 5 1/4, and 2 pieces of basic white that are 3 3/4 by 5 to layer on top of each other, one for the inside, one for the outside, and then a piece of scrap Granny Apple that this die fits on, so it doesn't have to be very big. This piece is, I'd say, 2.5 by about 3.5 is more than enough of a piece of scrap for that. And so then I've used our gorgeous grape sheer ribbon, which I thought worked well. My blends, I used the let's see, what is it? The dark granny apple and the light, yes, light Highland heather. And I used my black marker, and the only thing I used my black marker for was to put eyes. The eyes were yellow, and I just couldn't deal with it. So I put little eyes on the birds. So that is all we need, and then I use some of our pastel pearls. On this one I use the paler, these I use the darker. I think it's going to be kind of a combination of all of those things. This is the stamp that we're going to use. And when you make this card, all you really need to do is put this stamp on your block and turn it. I'm going to move it down here so I can get it on here. And turn it. Because it's photopolymer, it won't stay that way forever, but you can definitely get your corners done on this, and you see it wants to get away. So it's one of those things that put it in place, do your stamping, and then move on. Now, for the card that we're doing today, we don't need it folded in half or quartered, make a corner like that. We're going to use ours to stamp straight up and down. So I think I'm going to start with my stamping, and what I've used is smoky slate, I've used basic gray, and I have used So Saffron. So you also need a small scrap of white to stamp your birds, and they're actually pretty easy to stamp. So I've got my little bird here and my So Saffron, and these things cut out real easily with your your cut and emboss machine. And I think I used 4 birds for each card, but I will tell you this, that I stamped the 4 birds that I needed, and I lost one, so I restamped another one and cut it out, and then I lost one. So I'd say, because they're so small and they have a tendency to blow away almost, I'd stamp 5 or 6 of them just to be safe. Okay, and so that is all I did with those. And then, just like I said, because I can't stand it, animals should have real eyes, I just used my marker to come down over the eye on the bird and go ahead and put my eye in, and then used my bird and die cut my birds out. And I've got my birds all cut out and waiting for me right here. So it's stamping that we have to do, and because this is photopolymer, we need to stamp on our Pierce mat, and then I used some scratch paper here. So let's take this first one, and I'm going to stamp the front of the card first, and that I did in the smoky slate. So I'm going to open up my smoky slate, move some of these things out of the way until I need them, and I inked up my stamp, and there is a top and a bottom to this stamp. The top, I think, is where the vine starts, and the bottom is where the last little flower bud shows up. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, on my ribbon piece, I know I need room for my piece of ribbon, so I'm going to just cut my ribbon so that I have an idea. And I know that my ribbon is going to go right along here, so I want to start my stamping with my vine just right here to this side of it. So I need about that much room, and I stamped this first one so that it was almost the full length of the vine. In fact, I didn't even go all the way to the top. And then the next one, I shortened up just a little bit and spaced it over. And if you do this just right, it kind of goes in and out, and it, oops, I didn't get that stamped right. I may have to do that on the other side. I'm going to start that over again. So I'm going to stamp this first one, see if I can't get it right on the upper edge, and it needed to come over quite a bit. So I'm going to start my first one there. That's better. All right, then I'm going to do my second one right here. And then I'm going to do my third one just a little bit, and you'll notice I'm coming a little bit further over on the card on this one than I did on my original one, and I think it'll fill the card a little bit better and it'll look a little nicer. Okay, and then I know I have to do some stamping down the edge of my other piece of white, so we might as well do it while we're at it here. So I did the same kind of thing. I started this right at the top, and with this one I went right over to the edge. There we go. Then I started the next one right underneath that flower and tried to get that last bud on the paper. And there we go. Not terribly straight, but you get the idea. Okay, so that is all the stamping for that. That is all the stamping for the bird. Now, for my stamping on my sentiment, I did set it up on my Stamparatus. And I did that particularly because I was having difficulty, one, getting it straight, and two, getting it to stamp. It's quite a long message, and so there's a little bit of size to this one. So I set it up on my Stamparatus so that I think I've got it centered, and I'm just going to use my basic gray because that's a little bit darker than the smoky slate, and I'm going to ink this up. I could just use one of these other stamp sets here to give me some support while I ink this up. Let me make sure I've got plenty of ink on that. The letters are kind of fine, and that's another thing. I wanted to make sure that I could stamp this a couple times if I needed to get it just as dark as I wanted it. And on this one, I stamped this in black, and I didn't like it as much. It looked a little bit too stark. So I thought going to the gray might help me be a little bit more comfortable with it. Yep, I think I'm going to like that just fine. But I am going to put it on again. It's not quite as harsh as the black. And I have much better chance of success getting this dark enough, make sure that I'm getting it stamped properly. And on the second card, what I did was I stamped my sentiment on white and then just kind of fussy cut around and put it on the medallion. And I decided I liked it better stamped right on the medallion or my oval here. And you can see the difference. It's much softer. So I think I'm very happy with the idea of this one being done in the basic gray instead of the black. I think that is all of the stamping. All right, and put my Stamparatus to the side. And we're ready to start coloring on these cards. So here I've got my stamping done for my vines, for the inside and for the outside. So what I used to do this, and I'm going to show you one of these. We'll do this little one regular time, and then I'm going to speed the video as I go through and add my color on the rest because it's all the same. And I did use, again, the light Highland Heather and the dark Granny Apple, and I am using the small tip because these leaves and flowers are actually pretty small. So I'm going to put that on my scratch paper here because this is the alcohol marker, so it bleeds through, and I don't want to necessarily get my work surface. So you can see there's nothing special about this coloring. It is just getting the color down, and one swipe through these leaves just about does it. Now the alcohol marker does bleed on a little bit, so you want to be very careful. Small strokes, get this set up the way you want. That is all there is to the green, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the purple so that you can see exactly what I'm doing, and then I'll speed the video up and go through the rest of the coloring. And even though this is the light, it comes out fairly dark. So you just want to be careful, and I stamped this particularly in the smoky slate so that the outline wouldn't be very dark. So if you manage to go outside the lines and you use the smoky slate to do your stamping, you're not going to show, it won't look like you went outside the lines, which I think is a real boon. Okay, so that is all there is to it. You saw there's nothing special about it, no special shading, and that is using the light, and I think that's pretty dark for the flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these and speed it up. Okay, there is that coloring complete. Now I think the next thing I'm going to do is add my ribbon. So I've got my little silicone mat here, and I'm going to add some snail. Let's see, on this side of that vine and on this side of the vine here. All right, so here is my first piece of ribbon that I am going to set down right along this edge, getting it right where I want it. And you know, I think I'm going to put just a dab of glue in the center on this so that it stays put. There we go. And then on around to the back side of this, should be right about there. And that's close. There we go. All right. Now, that is all I need for that one. Now then, this one is similar, but I'm going to put it partially over the flowers, and I think that adds just a little bit of interest. And I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to give this just a little dab of glue right in the middle, and then, well, this time I'm putting glue on the ribbon. I'm not sure that's such a good idea. We'll see what happens here. But I'm going to start my ribbon right here, and maybe a little bit further down, like that. Bring it across here, catch that little dab of glue that I put down right there, and then catch this ribbon on around on the back side. And there is my inside just about finished being decorated. Okay, So that part is all ready to go. So now these pieces can be added to my granny apple background, and I'm going to put my seal on these, and I'm just going to put it in the center and the corners because I want to make sure that if I have to get this, that's one of the tricks of using the seal, is not to put long ribbons, because this is extremely sticky. And if you put just a dab in your corners and one in the middle, I'm finding that if I absolutely have to lift it up because I've forgotten something or it's not straight, then I have a fighting chance of getting it up. And it's still strong enough that that's on there permanently and is holding pretty well. So again, if you can, just a dab in the corners and a dab in the middle, and that's probably plenty. Okay, here's my other granny apple piece. So I'm going to set that one centered on here. Isn't that just pretty? Very, very pretty. Now on this one, I used a small dimensional cut in half under that bird, and it's almost too much. I think that what I'm going to do is on that bird that's going to go right in here, I'm just going to use a glue dot folded over on itself to give it a little dimension, but not quite as much as a dimensional. So if I set that like that, and I'm going to grab one of my birds here and put that right on the back there, then I can take my bird, because I want my bird to sit, I think, right in here, and it's fine with me if his tail is on the ribbon. So I think like that. Let's see what it looks like. I like that a lot. And he's not flat, but he's not raised as much as he might be on a dimensional. The other place that I put a bird was right down here on the bottom. So I think I'm going to do that same thing. There's my bird. And I'm going to get my glue dot, fold it over on itself, pick up the glue dot, put that on the bird, and then put my bird into place right down here along the edge on the bottom. Okay, I did put a knot bow on this one, and so I'm going to do that again. And I didn't want one pulled real tight. Sometimes if you pull real tight on the knot bow, you end up getting such a small knot that it kind of doesn't look right. So I thought maybe a little looser one would be better, and that way the tails don't shift so hard. They'll stay a little bit straighter that way. And I think that is just about right. And that way, once you tie your knot bow, you can decide which side of the knot you like better. And actually, I think I like the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one on with a glue dot as well. So I'm going to put that glue dot on my knot and then put that whole thing in place right here along this bottom edge, so it doesn't interfere with my stamping and it won't interfere with my sentiment either. So now I've got my sentiment, and on this I put this one here. I think centering it or moving it a little further over from the edge is good. So let me get some dimensionals on that and we'll put that into place. Okay, there is my sentiment all ready to go, and the only thing I have to consider is placement. And I want this to fill up the card a bit more than I did with this one. So I'm moving it in from the edge and up a bit from the bottom, and gently dropping it down. I think that's pretty good. Okay, I have another bird, 2 birds left here, and I'm going to add one of them to the top of my sentiment, and I'm just going to use some snail for that one, and I'm going to set that one right up here in this corner like that. And then I have one last little bird, and I'm going to do that same thing with a glue dot. So once more, I'm going to take my glue dot and fold it in half on itself. Pick it up, put it on my bird, and put my bird right down here for the inside of the card. Okay, so this is all ready to go on my card front, and then we'll just need to add some pearls and we'll be all done. So I'm going to add my seal to the back of my card. And put that in place here on my card front. Make sure I'm putting it on right side up. There we go. And then add my inside to my card. It's such a simple card, and yet it's so pretty. I just love purples and greens together anyway, but I wanted to use my Grace's Garden at least once, and I may do it again. Looks like I've got a bit of ink there. So I wanted to use my Grace's Garden, and I may do it yet again before it's retired. It's such a pretty stamp set. So there are the 3 cards, and you can see the slight differences from one to the other on this. It is really spreading out my vines further across the card, centering this a little bit more, using gray, basic gray on this instead of the black. And I do think I'm going to add pearls, but I'm going to add the softer pastel pearls on this one and see what I think. So I thought I would just kind of cascade them down the card across the center. So I'm just spreading them out here, not in a direct diagonal line, but so that that's the end result of this. Just down here, and maybe even one right over here, and I'm going to add one here, and maybe one right up in here. There we go. That is my project for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, well, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. Joining is always a good idea with Stampin' Up! You start out with a 20% discount. You purchase your starter kit for $99 and you get $125 worth of product. And there's lots of perks to being a demonstrator. Right now, I'm getting ready to make a card that's going to be a swap. I have been given one of the new stamp sets out of the new catalog coming, and because I'm going to be using it and I now own it, I can show it to you. It's called Etched in Nature. Isn't that pretty? And so I will be making a swap card and putting that up as a video sometime in the next week or so to get ready for sharing that online for a meeting that we're going to have online next month. So sneak peek, and I'm about to get my box with my pre-order from Stampin' Up! So as soon as that comes in, I'll share with you all of the new products that I have received so far. So again, that's it for me. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Oh, it just occurs to me that it is a new month. My prize for the month is a $60 shopping spree on me, and you put yourself into the drawing by putting an order of any size on my store, lbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.ingenuity.com. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon. Bye.